Welcome to the DJ Insider Podcast, sponsored by Amplified Events.
It's the only podcast where we break down insider information from our weddings, experiences, and advice from over 15 years in the wedding industry.
We're your hosts. I'm Mike Kane, owner of Amplified Events.
And I'm Chris Zart, general manager of Amplified Events.
Let's get into it. Well, welcome back. We're back. Another edition of the DJ Insider Podcast. And today we have a very special guest back to see us, Eric Jaeger from MB Events. Yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Of course, my partner extraordinaire in crime and DJing and all things, Chris Zart. And you brought us a really cool, kind of fun gift today.
I did. Yeah.
And this is what is this called? This is the...
So this is some bourbon. It's E.H. Taylor, small batch. A little bit tough to get, depending on where you're at, but very easy to drink and enjoy. And I think bourbon is something that you enjoy with friends, and that's why I brought it here for us.
I love it. It's a gentleman's drink. Thank you so much. Cheers.
I brought 2 glasses. I apologize.
Gumballhead, Free Floyd.
I'm so terrible.
Local brewery.
Local.
Yes.
Never get sick of it.
I love it. Well, yeah. So you reached out, and we're talking all things DJing, and it's the off season, and so it's really the booking season.
Yeah.
It's couples are reaching out, and they are looking for DJs and all kinds of vendors. And you reached out, and we kind of talked about, some things to look for in a DJ, and price points. So let's expand a little bit about that. When couples reach out, you have said, and I think it's so true. I hear a lot of professional wedding DJs and vendors talk about the first thing couples ask about is what? What do they say?
The first 2 questions.
Yes.
Are you available?
Yeah.
And how much?
That's right.
Yeah.
And those are good questions, right? Because
absolutely
it's like
valid questions.
That's what they need to know.
Right.
But if you're searching for a good DJ, and there's other things you should be asking.
Yes.
And so you've prepared a list of like 20 questions that you should ask. And we'll link to it on the podcast if you guys are curious about seeing it in more greater detail. But we're kind of going to be talking to some about that today because they're really good questions.
Oh, thank you.
Off the top of your head, are there a few that you think are really important to ask about?
Let's start with easy ones.
Sure.
Maybe. I'm thinking at the top of the list. In addition to pricing, we could ask, do you have any packages? What do you get with that pricing? Yeah. So maybe a little bit more detailed into the pricing. What do you get with that? I like to ask, how many weddings do you perform a year? And the reason that you ask this, you want to make sure that it's maybe not a hobby, or maybe it's something they're serious about. But more importantly, a lot of times when you ask questions, you ask why.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that many events?
Yeah.
And if they're able to answer that may give you a lot more insight into the kind of business they're running.
Yes. Who they are as a person, who they are as a business.
Right.
And sometimes those don't line up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people we love money, and I'm a really good person, but I really love money.
Yeah.
And that can be a different business that you're interacting with as a couple versus the opposite of that,
Yeah.
Or ideally they line up,
Yeah. I would say maybe what got you into DJing?
Yeah.
What's your backstory? Your why? That's getting a little deep, but maybe not right away. But that's something you can ask maybe a little further down the road. Have you been to the venue before? Have you been to my venue? And if you have, great. What can you share with me about that venue? If you haven't, would you be willing to go there before the wedding and just see the space with me?
Yeah.
Get a better idea.
Do a walkthrough.
Yeah. Right. Do you have insurance? Right. Kind of touchy. And, in the DJ world, a lot of times, a lot of the groups that we're part of on Facebook or whatever else, and we see everyone trying to minimize costs as much as possible. And sometimes they see insurance as something that is not a necessary expense. But if you're running a business, it 100% is.
Yeah. And honestly, the most professional organized venues require
it.
They want it because we are protecting our event. We're protecting our space. And we want to see that our vendors are insured to protect their work and their equipment, Yeah.
So now to get into maybe some a little more in-depth questions. Do you have a planning process, or what is your process to get the results that you're going to promise me.
Yeah.
I would say that most DJs that are in this for the right reasons, that have a clear defined process, and I know you guys do, as well as me, but they're able to share that process with you and the results they can guarantee because of that process.
Yeah.
So what's that process look like? And are you willing as a client to be part of that process? Because, for me, and since I'm going to meet with couples 4 times, are you willing to put in that much work? I don't want to call it work. We're going to have fun.
Yeah.
We're going to go out to dinner. That's one of our
Yes,
meetings. We're
yeah.
going to dinner. We're getting to know you that way. But are you willing to, is that what you are looking forward to doing? If not, then maybe we just want to go a different direction where it doesn't look like that, the process.
Yeah.
Trying to think of some other questions. Is there some questions that you enjoy when people ask you guys?
And I just wanted to say, I wish couples would ask those questions more. Honestly, like there's so many times where I've been doing this for like 8 years now. This past year, I've taken over sales for the company, and it's been really interesting to see that side of it because it's made me understand the business more and understand my job more, honestly. But yeah, some people, they just have hardly any questions, and that's fine. If you want to book with us still, that's no problem. But I really wish they would ask those questions more. And I really like that one of like, how did you get into that? That one's just fun to answer.
It is.
Because I get to talk about myself a little bit and, why I love my job and whatnot. But
And has that reason changed over the course of your career? Maybe
right.
Why do you still do it? Has your why changed? I know mine 100% has changed from when I started to what I'm doing now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you guys probably as well. It's like a living thing, and as the results you provide change, your reason why might change as well,
right.
and the people you enjoy working with
Yes.
might change.
Yes. Which is brings it all back to the whole thing is that we want to make sure we're in alignment with the right couples who are looking for what we do.
Right.
And if they're not aligned with that, and there's another company out there that does that, that we'd rather you be aligned with them because this is your wedding day. It's too big of a day to really risk on something that doesn't really make sense. It's not a good fit. It's a square peg, round hole kind of thing. That True Detective, big fan of it. Season 4 is out. The main detective in it is like, you're asking the wrong questions. Ask the right questions because that leads you to different answers and better critical thinking. You don't go for the obvious ones, go for the less obvious ones. The idea is it strikes a new line of thinking, a new conversation. And I think asking your vendors good questions will help set you up. Because then something will be pulled out of that vendor that you're like, I never thought about that, and I have to have it at my wedding. And there's a way we can make it unique to me and my family that nobody's ever asked me before, and that can strike up a whole conversation.
Yeah.
But one of those questions on your list, which I think is kind of cool to kind of get into, is how much should a DJ charge?
Yeah.
This is the big one.
That's touchy.
Touchy subject.
So when you're coming up with a budget, and again, you're buying something that you've never had to purchase in your life before, and you're seeing prices from $500 to $5,000 possibly.
Yeah.
Where do people get off thinking that they're worth that? Or, you know what I mean?
How do you justify it?
How do you justify it? My line is, if I have to justify my prices, I've already lost.
Yeah.
But with that being aside, so when you're trying to figure out what should I be investing in a DJ, well, you first have to think about what your priorities are for your wedding. If entertainment, everyone having the best time, all of that is a priority, then your DJ is going to be a big part of that, and you should probably invest a bigger portion of your budget on that. If how it looks is a bigger thing, maybe florals, maybe the venue itself is a big thing, But I think a lot of people have moved towards experience over other things. But wherever you place your priority is going to set your budget.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go to places like Wedding Wire or The Knot, and you're going to look at them and look at the research that they've done based on the feedback they've gotten from brides and that have said, hey, what did you end up investing on entertainment for your wedding? And a lot of these outlets have done their research, and they come up with a number or at least a range. But that range is average range. And my snarky answer is, do you want average for your wedding if entertainment is a priority? And if the answer is no, then maybe we need to look at spending a little bit more than average. So I did have another blog that I wrote that talks about what to expect at the different price point levels.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that blog too, but we're going to be talking about it. But it'll be in the description of this podcast too,
Yeah,
so.
And I have no problem with what anyone else charges, no problem at all, or what anyone is willing to pay.
Yeah.
But if you do have expectations, if you have really, really high expectations and you are only willing to put a low dollar value on that, then you have to be willing to accept the risk.
Yeah.
And so the more you pay for something, the less risk you're willing to take. You're putting all that risk on the person you're giving that money to.
Yes.
So all profit, it comes from risk, is one of the things I like to say. So if you don't want to take that risk as a couple, as a bride, as a groom, put that risk on the vendor that you want to hire that's able to guarantee those results.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the whole premise behind that.
I love that. And as DJs, we're really, and Chris and I talk about this all the time, that we're ideally what the couples are paying us to do is for the outcome. They want to have a great party. They want their guests to have a great time.
Paying for the experience.
Yes. And so, I love to use analogies. If you have, a beat up junky car and you just need to get an oil change, you could probably do it yourself. You could probably pay a guy, everyone has that guy. It's like my cousin will do it for $40 and a carton of smokes, or whatever. He'll fix you right up. He'll fix anything for that price. And then, of course, you can take it to a top tier custom shop that's going to do and so certain cars are not worth the price, right? But certain cars are a luxury car and it needs to be handled with care. And you love this car and you want it to be in the best people who understand this car in and out, and will do custom modifications and detailing and all that. It's a luxury experience for a luxury car. And if your goal is you want to have a premium luxury experience, there's a cost to that. You want a DJ who has lots of experience and is able to deliver on that to give you that outcome. Versus if you're like, I'm looking to save money because I'm on a very tight budget and entertainment's not important to me, that's going to have its own experience as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what your blog is kind of outlining.
Right.
And so let's talk about that. They're kind of delineated, and this is going to vary in the markets, but the first one, I think you had 600 and below. Mm-hmm. You're paying $600 for a DJ.
Right.
What are some things that you could probably expect from those kind of DJs?
Someone who's not doing this as a full-time job.
Yeah. So it's a hobby.
It's a hobby. Right. Nothing wrong with that,
Sure.
but it's a hobby.
Extra cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The equipment, and I don't like to talk about equipment because equipment at the end of the day, but equipment is important when we're talking about your ceremony.
Yes,
and
reliability.
The microphones are going to work,
Yes.
reliability. So they may not have the equipment, or they may not have ceremony equipment at all. They probably won't be comfortable on a microphone to be able to be your MC, to do introductions. Maybe someone else is going to step in and do that. They may not have any systems in place for you to put your music requests. Where do you want to put your music requests? Where do you want to communicate this? Maybe they don't have anything in place.
Yeah. Just text me. Yeah. Just write them down.
Right. There's no process.
And they don't help you with it. It's just give me the songs.
They're not coming from a position of expertise to help you. Exactly.
Yeah. Send me a Spotify list.
Yes.
Yeah,
just send me that and
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. I can make people dance no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's, So those are some of the expectations, I would say. They're not going to have insurance. They're not going to, a lot of these things.
They're not running a professional company.
Right.
This is a side hustle. It's so the amount of energy, the amount of investment in training and experience, it's not there. And it's nothing personal. I'm sure that there's DJs who would do a 600, they could put on a great show.
Yeah.
And I'm of a mind, if you are that good, you're not charging enough. You're not good at business. And you should, and I hear a lot of DJs on the forums complaining because they hate their day jobs and they want to go full-time as a DJ and they're just not ready to make the jump. And meanwhile, you see these DJs, they obsess about equipment when they should obsess about the experience they're providing to their couples.
Yeah.
Equipment is important, especially you should know how to use it.
Right.
But there's another level to that.
I just want to say,
Probably.
when people leave
Yeah.
a wedding too, they're not talking about like, oh, the DJ speakers looked really cool and sounded great. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I had a great time on the dance floor. I had a great time at the party. They kept everything organized. Really, I mean, other than just the music part, like when everything's smooth and organized, it's kind of like good CGI in a movie. It's like you don't notice it, you know?
Exactly.
Everything's working. Yeah, but when the lights go out, when there's a power outage,
Yep.
when we have unique songs, or we have a multicultural wedding, and half of the bride's family is from this other background, are you able to mix in those songs and do it in a way where we don't lose the other half of the wedding? You know,
Right.
those are things that an experienced DJ is able to do. So that the next price point, $600 to $1,400.
Okay.
So those DJs at that price point, what are some expectations that clients should have
So
or could have? You know,
I would say at this price point, they might still be hobbyists. Maybe they have less experience. Maybe they're just starting out.
second year in business or something.
It's
or-
it's a respectable amount, and it's a lot of times where people expect to pay for a DJ, that $1,200 to $1,400. So it's right there where a lot of times people want to budget for a DJ. So it's kind of dangerous in the fact that if you are really expecting more, but this DJ may not quite be where you need them to be yet. So their experience isn't there. They haven't had any formal training, you know, which we didn't talk about, but that's another question that you could ask.
Absolutely.
Is have you had any formal training? What makes you a qualified DJ or MC?
Yeah.
There's training out there.
There's tons.
You've
There's
searched
conferences.
it out. You've
yeah,
done it.
There's lots of it.
Nobody hardly ever does that, sadly.
Yeah.
Like any profession, any skilled tradesman, or even a doctor. Do you want to go to a general practitioner for surgery on? No, you want to see a specialist. So anytime you specialize and you go to further training, that's just going to elevate you as a business, as a DJ, and maybe what you're able to provide based on that training.
And it'll elevate the outcome.
Right.
Too. Yeah. But the last thing you want is a DJ who is like studying the YouTube video on how to mix at the wedding, or they're running a playlist on Spotify for the dancing portion of the night. Like, I'm just pressing play and just cue up the next song and just let it play. I
Yeah.
hope this works.
I would say at this price point here is there's a chance you might have a great wedding and he's undervaluing himself
Yeah.
or herself.
Yeah.
Or there's a chance that it's just terrible.
Yeah.
Because they're not quite there yet. And they're
I think a lot of DJs at that price point too, and this is what I think a lot of people don't understand. There's DJs who do bar gigs and they make a good living doing that. Different type of gig.
yeah.
There's DJs who are into scratch competitions or producing. They produce their own music. They're musicians. They're creatives. Different type of DJ. And there's wedding DJs. That's a different type of DJ.
Yeah.
And some of these guys, to make money because they're not making enough in the clubs or their personal music that they hype, I'll make up that money by being a wedding DJ, and I'll undercut the guys doing this full time
Yeah.
by charging $600 to $1,400, $600 to
Right. And when you think about it, and even for someone hiring a DJ to say, I'm going to pay someone $1,200 to come show up at my wedding for 6 hours, like 5 hours.
Yeah.
That's insane, but you're not paying for that. At that price point, you're paying for that and maybe 1 hour of prep.
I think it's also too, what do you think a DJ does?
Yeah.
And oftentimes people who are expecting that price point think we're just press and play.
Yeah.
And we're just running a playlist. We just have fancy speakers and a laptop and we're just plugging into that. That's not a DJ.
That's why I have a hard time sometimes telling people about my job. Like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm a wedding DJ. They're like, oh, you're a DJ. I'm like, no, I'm a wedding DJ. Like, there's a big difference. Because, that's what they think is just like, oh, yeah, you're just like sitting around in a bar. Or like, no, it's, there's a lot more to it than that. Music, I feel like, is a small part of our job.
Yes.
There's so much more to it than that, especially before the wedding,
Yes.
100%. And again, it all comes back to the outcome. An experienced DJ knows the right questions, the right things to ask the couple, to work with them, to help guide them, help teach them to have this amazing wedding. And then day of, they're able to make adjustments, put out fires, and do everything they can to elevate that experience for everybody. And ideally, the other vendors involved too, the whole team that's been hired. We get venues all the time. When we show up, thank God you guys are here.
Right. How many people on this podcast have said that to you?
Yeah, we had Cousin Vince at our wedding.
Yes.
I'm gonna stress-free night as a vendor or venue owner or whatever, just having another vendor to work
Groom's
with.
cousin is a club DJ, and I'm sure he's great, but he does not MC. you know, when they're ready to line up for introduction, what, I don't do that. And so the venue's having to do it, you know, just things that are like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And no other industry does this kind of happen where people can kind of sneak through and be a part of a luxury experience where they have almost no experience.
The barrier of entry is very low. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, you wouldn't let somebody work on your car who's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Michelin star restaurant, like, make this Bear Blanc. It's like, I can do a cheeseburger. That's about it.
You guys want fries? You can do that.
And you know, with this list, to be open, I've existed at every one of these price
Yes.
points on this list.
Yeah.
When I started, I was $595.
Yeah.
When I started. Now, I'm not going to say how long ago that was because I'm going to really date myself, but it was a while ago.
Yeah.
So I've been at all of these price points. So it's not coming from a place of trying to put anyone down. It's just really trying to set expectations so that you're not disappointed on your wedding day based on having higher expectations than what you should have.
Yeah. And when you get better, you get more experienced, you know better.
Yeah.
And you recognize to value your time more. That I'm offering way more in terms of the outcome, the experience that this couple is going to have than I did when I was charging $600. You know, I'm able to do more, and it's my full-time thing. This is all I do is worry about this wedding and focus on this wedding and making sure it's an amazing day. It's not an afterthought when you start moving up in those price points. And you know, the market will tell you if you're not able to deliver, that's what reviews are for.
Right.
I think I overpaid for this experience. Well, there's a way to handle that, you know.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the next point. That's, I think, a real interesting one, 1,400 to 2,800, because that's kind of where we are as a company, because we're still a young company. Most of my guys are under 30, and they have 5 to 6, some of them 8, 9 years experience. I'm in that 15, 16 range. And so I'm a passionate person and I'm a professional person, and I try to train my team and have them, but they're still young. They're still learning. They're very experienced. They're very good at mixing, but we're still working on out the kinks, I think, in a lot of ways to get to that price point that we're talking about, which is over 28, you know. What should couples expect at this price point
Right.
from that experience, from those DJs?
At this point, you're gonna start finding the DJs that are full-time,
Yeah.
that are running a serious business, that have the insurance, that are paying for all their own legit music. Maybe that's not is or isn't important to couples, but it should be.
Yeah.
You know, that they're not playing songs off of YouTube or whatever else.
Yeah, streaming it.
Yeah, their equipment, like what Chris said, you're blending into the background now. You're not advertising your equipment. You just have enough respect for the couple and the event to just try to blend in, to not stand out.
It's a cleaner setup.
Yeah, cleaner
It's a more
setup.
professional,
Everything is
a
more
planned approach to the layout, the beauty, the aesthetics of the.
Right.
There's a reason why a lot of photographers I see, they wear all black. They keep it really simple. They want to blend into the background.
Yes.
Like, we're really doing the same thing with our setup.
Yeah.
Because, we don't want to take away from the venue style, the decorations that the couples have put in.
Absolutely, I agree. You probably have some type of system in place for these. This is our process for working with you and all of that. There's probably some training, maybe that's happening to educate your DJs to set them up for success. To all of that. If it's a multi-op, I'd say that's where you're at.
Yeah.
You're probably able to maybe select who your DJ is in the multi-op world and meet them. I'm not sure, but probably you're getting close to that.
I think it's the more and more reasonable expectation. You start paying the higher price point.
Right.
I want to know who's going to be the person.
Yeah.
You know,
As a single op, you're just working closely with them. You're probably going to have a few meetings. You're going to really talk a lot more detail into how to create different things. So it's a good, respectable amount to live in. I think probably a lot of people would fall into that category as far as finding a DJ or budgeting.
Yeah. Well, and it like you said, they're going to be more educated, more experienced. And, again, the more you do something, you realize, like, I should be paid. I know I'm working real hard, and I know I can do a good job.
Yeah.
And you've said, as a customer, you want this type, I can deliver this. But this is what I charge for that.
Yeah.
And there's a trade-off in that. And so if you want that type of experience, then you got to pay for it. If you want a BMW, they're not going to go on sale.
Right.
You got to pay that price for that luxury automobile. And same with if you want somebody working on it, you know, you're not going to trust it to the cousin who does it for $40.
Right.
Let your baby.
Yeah. And it's almost misleading because once you start reaching the higher levels here with pricing, the people that are really talented at what they do just make it look so dang easy.
Oh, yeah.
And so you almost watching someone, you're like, I could do, you know, but you can't, you can't.
Yeah.
You know, this person is so talented at what they do. They just make it look easy.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, could be good and bad.
Yeah.
But you're happy that they do make it look easy.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads me to that price point. There's a whole nother level above this. And then I've heard about guys that are like, yeah, our talent fee's $12,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's just for us to show up.
Yeah.
Then we have enhancements, you know, other thing, you know, it's a different level that people are, but they're being flown around the world. They have these budgets are 6-figure weddings, 7-figure weddings, you know, different level that you're trusting this.
And the work that has to be put in for it.
Yes.
Like, you know, it's like that guy that's charging $600. He also doesn't want to work that hard.
And
He wants to make that money.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't want to have to go above and beyond, do all the planning process. Yeah. As that price point goes up, the amount of work that we as a vendor have to put in goes up too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not a hobby.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys are not doing weddings necessarily every weekend. Some of them do, I'm sure. They stay busy. Some of these guys in my feed, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys they're crushing it.
Yes.
And it's humbling and cool to see, you know, inspiring. But I've noticed that all those guys have that in common, that they are very experienced, very professional. They look like they're having fun. It's a different wedding. I mean, it's just so above and beyond. When you do something enough, you learn how much you know, but you also learn how much you don't know. And when you see somebody make it look easy, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like some of these guys in the Olympics or sports, you're like, I could never. That's incredible what they're able to do.
Yeah.
You know. And so, yeah, we're getting more into that price range, 28 to 45.
Right.
What kind of experience should couples expect from those kind of DJs?
This is going to be ultra personalized. This is going to be spending a lot of time with this DJ, and it's he's going to help guide you to help you understand the kind of experience that you want to have. Maybe you don't even know, you have an idea, but through conversations, you're going to be able to figure out the kind of experience you want, how you want your guests to feel at your wedding. It's a lot more of that, how you want them to feel.
Yeah.
And then what kind of things can we do that reflect you and your fiance as people to bring that into your wedding and it still make everyone else feel a certain way at the wedding. So it's going to be a lot more as ultra personalized as you can imagine. So
that's different.
Yeah.
Than you know, like I said, we're at that 14 to 28 kind of price point on our average bookings. And we do put a lot of time to get to know our couples, and we do try to personalize it, but we could do a lot more, but we are trying to do a great job with what we have, you know.
Yeah.
But I found that there's like you're saying, it's more about what kind of experience do you want your guests to have? You're developing a very personal relationship with those couples when you're at that higher price point, because that's part of how you do the work you do. I don't know another way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot more time, but that's a lot more experience, a lot better outcome on the couples. When I worked that wedding with you last, I was blown away.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh.
I think the hardest thing, especially for me, and I struggle with this all the time, is how do I even say this is what I do, or because they've never seen it. So how do you explain something that people have never seen or experienced? It's a really tough place to be in.
Yeah.
So, and I do put my price on my website. I do put it out there, but right after that is a little review that says he was well worth it, because I need to justify this number I put in your face that most times a lot of people will just click off my website after they see that, you know, and that's okay.
It's so hard when people haven't met you.
Yeah.
For them to immediately understand the value you're able to provide by just, they read a little quick blurb on your website and saw a picture. They really have to call you. They have to spend some time. They have to ask questions. And we always encourage, do your research, get to know this person who you are entrusting with your wedding day.
Yeah.
That's not a small thing. A lot of people, it's an afterthought, and their wedding will reflect that if it's an afterthought, I think, personally. But couples who are really all in, who really want an amazing experience, they should also put in effort to research, to spend time getting to know the vendors, asking those questions, and let the vendors get to know them and help craft that experience. Like I said, we talked about it, and if you haven't, I'll put a link to the previous episode. But some of those things that you did for that couple were such unique things that, like, I was like, oh my gosh. You had a same day photo of them. You had like the way they did the proposal. And like there was so many unique things that were tied back to like you were part of the family, it felt like to me.
Yeah.
It was not, and it reflected in your level of confidence and ease and professionalism and just flow. And it was a great party.
Yeah.
Like it was
I mean,
all the things.
We partied ourselves. We had a
Oh
good
my
time.
gosh, it was epic.
Yeah.
But it was just such a different thing than I'm used to because we're working every weekend at that price point, and we're always working on improving, getting better. But the time that you spent with those couple, it really reflected in that experience. I could tell.
Yeah.
I think a question for both of you, I guess. You know, when you're saying like a couple approaches your website and they see the price or whatever, it's like, how do I trust this person? You have that meeting afterwards too, and obviously they can ask questions, but getting reviews, getting your, you know, good vendor relationships, good venue relationships, a lot of couples can see that when they see like, oh, this person's a recommended vendor. And I tell couples tell me that all the time, like, oh yeah, well, we knew you're a recommended vendor.
So we found you.
Immediately the trust is a lot higher, just knowing that. But when you guys started your businesses, did you have a lot more clients that asked kind of worried questions? I guess that might be a bad way to phrase it, but, you know, just like a lot of those really concerned questions, like how long have you been doing this? When you have less reviews, when you're getting started, when you don't have your brand built up yet, did you kind of have that at the start of more clients being a little more skeptical, and did that lessen over time? Or
I think so.
Yeah.
I think for sure. That's a good point. And maybe that's why I don't hear them as much, because people have already, what do I want to say? They already have seen the value through the referrals, through the reviews and all of that. But it definitely was when I started off. I mean, my busiest year, I did over 100 weddings myself.
wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I did one wedding 100 times. It was the same wedding, and I just changed the names. But still, we got people to dance and all of that. But
Yeah.
And you were still working hard. You were
yeah.
still doing great weddings. Like but the amount of time you could dedicate to those, and it's different. It's a different thing.
yeah, and so you know, you don't know what could have been.
Sure.
Because we didn't put in the work to get there, but I didn't know any better then, and they didn't know any better. But yeah, that's a good question, and I do think that some of those questions on that 20 question list may not get asked as much. Maybe those are questions to ask someone that you're looking at that maybe their price is attractive.
Sure.
And maybe it's a referral from a venue, and it's like, okay, but I don't know a whole lot about this person. Let's just ask some of these.
Yeah.
I think what you kind of led into is spending time with people, and I always encourage people to meet 3 or 4 DJs before you even make a decision.
Absolutely.
Find out, and this is a recurring theme with everyone on this podcast, is who's going to vibe with you.
Yeah.
You know, as a creative, it is so that one of the toughest things is trying to find who the people are that you really identify, who you enjoy working with and who they are, because you just want to be creative. You just want to put it out there and party with everyone, and you want to make everyone your client. And it's like, well, maybe everyone isn't my client. And so you have to start saying no in a way, you know, like, this is maybe not my client. So you, the more often you could work with the people that you vibe with, and meeting with people is the only way you're really going to learn if, hey, are him and I on the same page, or her and I, like, can I really see planning my whole wedding with them and then celebrating on the wedding day? Like, that's the person in charge of my wedding. Yeah. So meeting with four DJs, 5 DJs.
It's well worth it.
It's worth the time.
Because just because one company does a good job doesn't mean they're going to be the right fit.
Yes.
You know,
that's it.
You really got to find someone who's going to work well. And that is kind of hard as you know, like talking to a couple and kind of letting them know, like, hey, like, I know that you like us and everything, but you might have a better experience with somebody else. And that's what's important, because, you know, we talk about this a lot, but you get one shot at this.
Yes.
It's really important to get it right if you can. So
it really wasn't until I started going to other DJs. When we're DJing, we're at our weddings. We're doing our thing. And if you don't get outside your comfort zone and see other DJs and see what they do, you don't learn. You don't improve. If you don't go to conferences and educate yourself, you don't get better. You don't take courses. You don't, and so, yeah, it's been eye-opening to me to see some of the things. It's really encouraging. Like, oh, yeah, they do this well, and I do this well. And other things, I'm like, oh, my goodness, they're doing a different thing than I'm doing. And I see the value in that. And I'm like, that's something I could never do, or something I don't want to do, or, and you start to figure that out more and more. But then you realize on the back end that as an experienced wedding DJ, like 16 years in the industry working, and I've had a lot of weddings experience, but I'm like, there's stuff that I don't even know. There's stuff still and so for people who've never even been married before or even been to many weddings, it's like, how would they possibly know this?
Yeah.
And that's where we start the podcast, right? It's like, because we got to talk about this, and it's very hard to talk to somebody who is buying something they don't necessarily understand and explain to them, yeah, here's why I charge $5,000. That's a weird conversation to have with somebody. And I don't know that my answers would be convincing to them, because there's so many things that are detailed in that price point that have nothing to do, with everything that person is expecting necessarily, but it's a wild thing.
Yeah. And from a person that hasn't had to hire a DJ before, the bar of being a DJ is so incredibly low. And not isn't it, but it's just so low. The expectations, what people have been exposed to at other weddings, it is just really low. So it's almost really easy to impress someone. Yeah. Maybe when you're not, I don't want to put anyone down, but you know what I mean? Maybe you're not going to be the right fit, but they're just so easily impressed based on their history and what they've seen that they aren't truly hiring the right person for them. I love meet more people.
I love asking venue coordinators, owners, people who typically have the first contact with the couples before the DJs. What do you look for in a DJ to be your recommended, And almost the number one response, of course, they want a great party, but the number one response is, I want somebody who's responsive and communicative, that somebody I can work with and trust that they'll be there. Like, that's how low the bar is, that they've had DJs not show up to the wedding.
It feels kind of good. I mean,
it does.
Like,
that we're just showing up and we're getting a gold star.
Does feel kind of good.
That's a very low bar, and so you automatically are impressive because you were able to send an email within 24 hours back to the venue or respond to a text, and you showed up when you said you would, and you set up and you did just a decent job. Suddenly you're like 5-star, you're an amazing,
Yeah.
That's a low bar. And so we want to my opinion, let's elevate the industry. Let's elevate those DJs who are not, if you're not one of us, you're not going to show up. Don't get out of here. You're giving us a bad name.
A question I ask every couple, like pretty much every time, is like, any weddings you've been to throughout your lifetime, good, bad experiences. Doesn't have to be about the DJ, just in general, but it usually is the DJ, and it's usually bad. Like, because at least once someone had, their mics were cutting out the entire time, or, they played the wrong song or something like that. And immediately when they say that, I'm just like, it's almost impossible to mess some of these things up that I hear, that it does blow my mind a little bit. But
you immediately feel like empathetic for that couple that had to endure that. and but then they still say, oh, but it was okay. I mean, it was still a good party. And I'm thinking, that's unacceptable. Yeah. It's just not acceptable. When for you guys, it would not be. You put too much time and effort and knowledge and skill and training into knowing your equipment and choosing the right equipment and knowing how to utilize it and how to properly set it up to where that's not going to happen for you. And it just comes down to the very first conversation I had with my wife, and we referenced it on the other podcast. Is I said, she had such great relationships with her couples. And I said, I want that, and I said, how do I get there? And she said, well, you just have to care. And I was like, oh, that kind of hurt, but it was true though. You have to truly care about your couples and the success of the day. And your ego has to be put aside. Everything that you think is right has to be put aside. And you're talking to your couple to listen and to learn and to understand. I wrote, you saw a little bit earlier today, I wrote something on a Facebook post.
Yeah.
But it's really, you just want to get them to what they've envisioned for their day. What does success look like for them?
To me, all the best vendors in this industry, the ones I've interviewed, the ones I've worked with, they all have that singular thing where they put aside their own ego for the good of the couple, the good of the day, even their personal stuff, where they're like, yeah, it's not about me. I may have crazy things going on at home. I've heard crazy stories. I've had some wild things happen in my life when my dad had surgery and some crazy things that happened with that. And I was still there working a wedding.
Yeah.
And right after he passed away, the next weekend, I was still there And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that like that has become like, this is who I am as a person. And I care about the work I do. And therefore I care about the couples that I'm committed to being there. And it would take a lot for me to not be there. An emergency, something terrible would have to happen for me to not follow through on what I promised you. And this is the best advice I can give to any couples looking for DJ. Of course, meet with them, get to know them. But what promises do they give on the website? And do those line up in the reviews, the experiences that the couples give that they've had with that? Do they promise an epic full floor all night? And our couples in the review saying, it was kind of boring. It was kind of lame. It really wasn't worth the money. I'm always weary of DJs who are like, we're the cheapest ever. We're the most affordable. Like, I was like, that's what you want at your wedding,
Man, do you not see it on the Facebook groups on the daily? And I just saw one the other day, and I'm not going to call any names out, but she had listed her budget for florals, for DJ, for photo booth, for all that. She listed her budget out. I respect the fact that you have a budget you want to adhere to, and you're putting it out there.
Yes.
Is someone willing to work with you for this budget? And the amount of and these budgets were very low.
Yeah.
But the amount of people that were lined up, people that I've known for years, and I was just in shock that people were lining up, and not that it's a bad thing, but I just, people portray one thing, like I am this level, and then they're lined up for this. Where are they really? Are they going to put this $1,500 effort into a $500 wedding?
Yeah.
I have Trish and I had and we had a couple reach out. We did a wedding 6 years ago at Allure on the Lake, the old Allure on the Lake, 6 years ago, and it was just a fantastic wedding. About 6 months ago, a couple reached out to us that was at that wedding, and they want to hire us both. Both of our prices are double what they were 6 years ago. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, and this couple could not come up with a deposit payment. And I was thinking, now you're stuck in this. I want to be able to offer them the same price that I offered this other. It's such a tough place to be. But when you talk to them and you meet them, and you're like, I want to give this couple everything that they saw. They truly want. Can you make that work? Can we maybe meet somewhere in the middle? How can we compromise on maybe you don't have uplighting at your wedding for this, or I don't know what it is, but I know you talk about that a lot too. Yeah. In when you find your right person, you just want to find a way to work with them.
Yes.
So that's a situation we were kind of in. Now with the situation, the parents already said, that's crazy pricing. That's insane. Now we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So now if we lower our prices, parents are still going to say that's crazy pricing. They're just, that's where their mindset is. So now is there friction on the day of the wedding? Are we still the best people to do this? Or
and they're going to be looking at you with magnifying glasses.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't worth that. I didn't like.
Yeah. And so it's like, what a tough position to be in.
Yeah.
We haven't made a decision yet, but we'll see. We'll follow up on that one. But
it is tough, and I try to work with couples who are humble, and we have a genuine, and they recognize our value, and like you said, I have some relationship. There's some reason it checks a lot of boxes, is what I call it. I really vibe with this couple. I did their sister's wedding and those kind of things. But again, that's a different scenario than somebody who's like, what's the price? How can you justify that? I don't really. My price is this, and I want all this for that much.
Right. This guy said he can do the same thing for less.
I know you're only talking to me because you already see that I'm better than this guy. Otherwise, you just go book that guy. I'd never hear from you again.
Right.
Right? I'm not dumb. Like,
yeah.
Why are you even talking to me? You want me to be at that guy's price, but you don't want that guy. If you like that price, book that guy.
I think another one of the 20 questions that I said was, do they have, and you mentioned this, you would, no matter, it would have to be catastrophic for you to miss an event.
Yeah.
And there has been it's been going around where a lot of DJs we hear of that are not, or wedding vendors that have been ghosting brides that didn't show up for the wedding or this or that, whatever. And you said it would have to be completely catastrophic, but knowing that you also have a backup plan in
backup
place.
plan, backup people.
It's there. And I have the same thing. I'm a single op, so having a backup plan is a lot different, especially when I've worked with the couple so closely. But I did have one situation. It was a COVID reschedule that ended up rescheduling. And due to COVID, I wasn't able to fulfill this couple's. And what we did is I flew in a DJ from one of the guys that I'm very close with that does the same kind of weddings that I do. He's in South Carolina, and I flew him up, and he DJ'd this wedding. And he knocked it out of the park. Like, this bride and groom fell in love with him. I almost became really jealous of him because I'm like, that's my couple,
Hold on a minute. Yeah.
He did some amazing things for this couple and has pictures of it to prove it. And what he did, he just went so above and beyond in a 1 week's time for this couple to pull this off. Well, someone who was at that wedding reached out to me. It was for November 30th of this year.
They want that guy again?
Well, they wanted me because they also saw me at another wedding.
Okay.
They said, but then I in this time frame of them not booking, because I'm not holding dates, someone else booked their date, and now they're like, Eric, we're so sorry, we drug our feet, but hey, can you bring that other guy up here again to do our wedding? So yes, and as a matter of, they are.
Oh my God. You're gonna be a multi-op owner before you know it. You're gonna be giving that guy a ton of business.
Like, they know what they want so much that they're going to pay for a DJ to fly in from South Carolina and provide this experience that they witnessed. So I just think when I told him that, he was over the moon excited, and I hated him even more.
But to me, it really speaks. Right? Come on, you're making me look bad. You're doing better than I.
Yeah.
But ideally, that's what you really want in a vendor. You're somebody who you take this job seriously. You've educated yourself. You invested yourself. You've developed a network of friends who have similar values. Yeah, that's what it is. You have values, and there's a couple they booked with you, and you look at that as, I made a promise to you. I'm going to be there. And because of COVID, something weren't able to fulfill that promise. And you're like, well, I have a guy, and I'm going to pay him to come out, and he'll do just as good a job, if not better than me.
Yeah.
That to me that's a business owner you want to hire, who's like, when I fall short, I'm going to make it right. We all have those weddings that are tough to do. And there's things, I've had weddings where the power went, it's just out of your control. But who are you going to make the best of it, or you're just going to give up and leave? Are you just going to not show?
Yeah.
And to me, that's part of what you're paying for when you book somebody, is that they have hopefully their brand, their morals, they align, the values of the company align with the experience the guests are going to have. And one of those is, I take my promises seriously. I have a contract with you. You pay me. COVID happened. We had dates change. We're going to make it right. We're going to figure it out for you. When I used to do therapy, it's really important that you don't just drop a relationship. You develop a trust with somebody, and you're working on difficult personal issues, and people are sharing, and they need to be able to trust you, but there's an honor that you have to keep with that, and that if you have to leave, you're going to hand that person off to another person who's very skilled. And if you are not skilled in that particular area of therapy, that you're going to recommend them out to somebody else who is. You're not going to touch that. It's unethical and immoral. You could lose your license. It's a big thing. And I think DJ should have that same level of care, because it's people's weddings. This is people's lives we're talking about. We shouldn't just be so quick to like, thanks for the money.
Yeah.
We heard that story of that DJ who booked a photographer friend of ours, and then he just ghosted her, never responded, never. And then basically it was like, well, if you cancel, I keep the fee. And he didn't have any realistic DJ. There was no communication. She's like, it's a month out. I'm getting married next month. And I'm like, that is fraud. Like, it doesn't sound like he ever had any intention of doing that work.
Yeah.
And then he gets you because you canceled the contract because you're so tired of his non-communication with you.
Yeah.
And you're freaking out. Is my DJ going to be there or not? You know, like, that's we got to get rid of people like that in our industry. I don't know how to do that beyond elevating.
Well, educating the consumer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
you know, the kicker with that wedding is at the time that DJ, we were able to separate friendship and business.
yeah.
And I said, well, what am I going to owe you to come up here? He said, well, cover my travel.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, what do you want me to pay you for the wedding? You know, and I thought maybe it would be what I charged. And he said, well, you know what my rate is. And at the time he was charging $900 more than me. So I had to come up with that.
Oh my gosh.
Plus the fee. But at the end of the day, like I have a raving fan
Yes.
out of this bride. And you know, I mean, that is well worth it.
Your
There's no amount of money you can put on your commitment, your word. There's no amount of money you could put on that to go back on that.
Promises mean nothing if you don't keep them when there's pushback.
Yeah.
If it costs you something to keep your word, then that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
If it doesn't, then your word means nothing. Oh, this is going to cost me. Forget it. I'll just tell them, go kick rocks and find another DJ.
Right.
That's what it is. It costs you. I assume you didn't make any money on that wedding.
Oh
but
gosh, no.
It doesn't.
I lost my butt. Yeah.
But to me, the couple's wedding was more important than you making money.
100%.
And you were able to say, oh, communicate with the couple, you communicate with your friend, you made it happen. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
And, you made what happened is what should have happened.
Yeah. I did have drapery going out that night at Sandy Pines as well. So I made him go help me with the drapery.
There you go. Yeah, you get
He hates drapery now.
Well, I'm going to pay you. You're working for me.
No, he's a good guy and he saved my butt. And I thank him to this day.
Oh, I love that. That's what it should be about. Yeah. That's really why we do this podcast and why we do this work. And I love meeting individuals who are aligned with that, who care about, they take it seriously. It's not just a job. It's not just a paycheck. It's more than that. This has been awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
Thanks for having me
coming
back.
on. I really
Thanks for having me back.
If couples are interested in we're going to, of course, tag the blogs, tag the things. If they're interested in working with you and the experience that you're talking about, what's the best way they can reach out to you and get in touch?
Yeah, I would say search MB Events. My website is mbevents1.com. MB Events is apparently owned by Mercedes-Benz, so I goofed up on that one. Yeah, but yeah, we're mbevents1.com.
MB Events. Well, guys, this has been the DJ Inserted Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Mike. This is Eric.
I'm Chris.
And we will see you at your wedding. Thanks so much, guys.